I'm going to show you how to make Christina's famous nuts right now. I'm not quite sure how they became famous, but somewhere along the way, people always ask me for this recipe, and it's always been a crowd pleaser. So they became famous and it got published, and there you have it. I learned about this dish, or I had it for the first time when I was traveling in Morocco many years ago. We would go to these small villages and see these communal ovens, these beautiful communal ovens where everyone in those villages would bring their unbaked loaves of bread on boards. They'd bring them to the communal ovens and they would bake the bread, and they'd come back a few hours later to a freshly baked loaf. And in the corner of these ovens, they always had little plates, little bowls of nuts roasting in the oven, closer to the front of the oven, away from the heat. And I loved these nuts, and I came home and did my best to recreate them. So this recipe is very simple and it's very forgiving, but there are a few very important key steps that you can't mess up in order to be successful. Today I have pecans, almonds, and walnuts, but you can really use any nuts you have on hand, any combination. You can add pumpkin seeds, you can omit, you can add cashews. It really doesn't matter what nuts you use, but they do have to be raw nuts, so untoasted nuts, raw nuts. And today I'm just going to use walnuts, almonds, and pecans. And the important thing here is that you only want your nuts to cover one layer of your cookie sheet. You don't want it to be too high. So I can add a few more nuts here. Okay. And then the next step is adding herbs. They must be fresh herbs, and you really should only use rosemary and sage. I don't suggest using anything else. So it's really simple. You just take the rosemary and kind of strip the branch, and you want to keep the herbs on the bigger side. You don't want to chop them or make them too fine, because you want to be able to have a little bit of herb with your bite of nuts. So I'm just going to keep adding more rosemary here, and you want to add more nuts than you think, because they shrink down when you bake them, and the herbs are really meant to be very plentiful. And then with the sage, I just tear the leaves. There's no chopping. If you have small sage leaves, you can just use the small leaves, but I will have to tear these because it's really quite large, this sage. But these smaller leaves can go in whole. And I think I should have a couple more. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is add the olive oil. You wanna use a good quality olive oil. Now, you want the nuts to be moist, but not drenched in the oil. So this is also the other very important step. So you want to be generous, but not too generous. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm going to go straight away and add my kosher salt. You could also use a flaky salt. You could put something spicy if you wanted them to be a little bit more spicy. So I'm pretty generous with the salt here. And then add some pepper. Not too much, but just a little. And then you toss the nuts. So you want them to be completely covered. You want the herbs to get a little of oil on them. And I really just keep mixing until it's all incorporated. Okay. Then, just like that. And it's ready to go. So the key to this recipe is keeping a very low temperature on your oven, 200 degrees or lower, and for a minimum of 2 hours. And what's gonna happen here is you're actually gonna dry the nut out instead of roasting the outside. So many times we burn the nuts, and so this nut will be completely dry to its core, so super crunchy. And that's why I think these nuts are so popular, because they're so crunchy and delicious and savory from the herbs. And then, ta-da, the magic magic of television. Here we are, finished nut recipe. So you can see all the herbs are nice and dry and crunchy, and you really get a bite of herbs with every handful of nuts that you have. I'm gonna sit down, have a little aperitif after I finish this, and hope you enjoy the nuts.